Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 22nd, 2011 meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners. And the very first thing I have to do before I even call for order is I have to give a shout out to my daughter. Today is her 30th birthday. Happy birthday, Mary Teresa. I know I don't look like I have a 30-year-old daughter. I do. And she was born 30 years ago today, so thank you for that indulgence. May I have a roll call, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair. All 5 selectmen are present, plus Town Administrator Mark Andrews.
And do we have any announcements?
No, we don't, Madam Chair.
I think I'd like to remind everybody that this Saturday on the 26th, there's a breakfast at the VFW that honors our local Vietnam veterans. It starts at 10 o'clock, and I'm sure you can get more information by calling the Post. I think we did make that announcement last week, but I'd just like to remind everybody we have 4 members of our community who lost their lives, gave the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, and this is a great way to remember those gentlemen. So if you can make it over to the breakfast at the VFW, that would be very honor for them. Thank you. Citizens' participation. Is there anyone who wishes to speak before the board this evening? I'll take the lady first, and then I'll take the gentleman. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. Good evening. Sandy Slavin. I was watching last week's meeting about the discussion of appointments to several of the boards, and I remember, was it September, we had a workshop, you had a workshop to talk about the process for appointing and reappointing. And I know that what I'm about to talk about could very well jeopardize my ability to be reappointed, because I know there are some people on this board who will not reappoint me because I'm on too many committees. But I went looking at the town's website, and I was looking for that standard policies, procedures, guidelines that was developed for people who wanted to apply for volunteer positions. I couldn't find it anyplace. I thought it was going to be made public what the process or the guidelines were for appointment. I know there was some discussion. You wanted them to come to at least 3 meetings as a guideline. You wanted to interview them physically, but I went looking for it. So when I heard them being asked last week, how many meetings did you attend, maybe they didn't know that there was a guideline that they should be at 3 meetings. And then just one more. Then I went looking at the volunteering opportunities that were listed on the site. It said that the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust had openings. We have 5 members. We have no openings. So I was surprised to find it there. I was extremely surprised to find the Community Preservation Committee had an associate opening. There was never an associate plan for CPC. And I'm saying, okay, now here's my questions. Is there a guideline available for the public to look at regarding openings and how to apply for positions, or someone's position who's up for reappointment, you may not want to reappoint, how do people apply for that opening?
Generally speaking, and we had this discussion, that there's no extra written policy, Sandy, but I believe that we had asked that that information be put on the application itself, and that our office was supposed to disseminate that information with the application. I don't know why that's not happening. If it's not happening, I will look into it tomorrow, but it seems to me that those instructions have been put out there more than once for that information to be on the application.
It could very well be on the written application in the office, but it's not on the website. You have 2 different forms on the website. Neither of them are there.
As I said, I will look and see why it's not on the website.
Then my second question is, who puts out the list of volunteering opportunities of boards that have openings?
That should also be coming from our office. They should be keeping track, and Mr. Holmes has spent a lot of time working with the office to try to get this information correct, and I don't know where the disconnect is between the IT department and our office, but we will certainly find out, and that will certainly be rectified this week. I'm
As
sure
I said, it
Mr.
was
Holmes
awful.
will make sure that that's taken care
really
of.
surprising to find the Affordable Housing Trust had an opening.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Certainly, please go ahead, Mr. Holmes.
It's not right for you to sit there and have to answer these questions if I'm the person. I thought we had, I didn't personally look, so I will check tomorrow. But we did put up the Word document, and I'll go and find out and make sure that it is online. I thought we had already done that. And the second thing is we have been trying to go through some of the committees. I know I had one mistake last week on the Clean Water Committee, where I only had one opening due to a resignation, and there was actually another opening. So I know we're doing some work on that. I see her here tonight. We're doing some work on the Council on Aging and updating that page probably tomorrow. So I will look through these, Sandy, and make sure that we get them up to speed.
I'd like to make a
Well,
recommendation.
and to your second point, if I may, it was probably about 2 months ago, I sat here and read out all of the openings that we had during one of our meetings.
I remember, and affordable housing was not listed.
I don't remember what was on it. It was a long list of boards that I read off that we had some openings on. I mean, we're getting together now. Once we go through all these, we'll get another list out, and hopefully we can get that up on the website to say that what I'd actually like to see is a school board on the front page, and then if you go into a board, to show that they don't have anybody's name if it's empty, and it should say blank or opening.
Yeah, and that
And
would...
it doesn't say that.
This is
So-
a recommendation. I went down looking at that. I know that I'm a chair of one committee, and I have an open spot on that one committee. I said the word vacant on my page. I'd like to see all of the committees indicate
Right.
what openings they have, so when someone looks at it, they don't see 4 names and saying, oops,
There's
should
no
it be a
openings.
fifth?
Right.
Yes. And if I also look at some of them, there's no dates as to when the terms expire. So that doesn't help anybody apply for a position when they don't know when an opening is going to happen.
Well, I actually had that question today. On one of the boards I was looking at, I wasn't sure.
And I'm going to say CEC has no dates as to when they expire.
I wasn't sure whether the date was, it was the Clean Water Committee we were looking at today, and I wasn't sure if that date was the expiration date or when they were appointed.
Yep.
So
And
I
some of
think
the
at the
dates are
top,
still- yep.
we're going to put a title there that says, term expires.
And some of
June.
the dates still read 2010.
Right.
I mean, just,
Yeah.
if
Thank
someone
you.
wants to
We have some
volunteer,
we
you
have
got-
some cleanup
clean
work
up
to
to
do
do.
there.
And thank you for your time and good evening.
Thank you. Gentleman in the front.
Yeah, my name is Gerald Barrows, and I want to know, for my own personal information on the Ethics Committee, are you supposed to open meeting and open session before you go in the executive session and state why you're going and have a roll call vote for each person going in the executive session?
Yes, sir, we are, and we do.
You did it tonight?
Yes, we did it tonight.
You did it? Yeah, what time did you do it?
6:35.
6:35, I was here at 6:30. So how could you do it at 6:35?
I
Because that's why, especially why I come. Okay,
Mr.
let
Barrows.
me finish. Let me finish, please.
Sir,
Let me finish. It wasn't done because crews came in the same time I did. Then Winslow come in after you had the door locked. I just want to know if it's true.
Mr. Barrows, the microphones weren't on, and perhaps you did not hear me state it, but I stated I would entertain a motion to go in. I opened the meeting, and I stated I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. And we had a roll call vote, and I had to read number 3, which was the reason for our meeting, and it was a unanimous decision to go into executive session.
Well, if you had it at 6:35, I was here at 6:30. Why didn't I hear it?
As I said, Mr. Barrows,
I'll
maybe the
stand right out there.
the microphones weren't on,
Yeah.
so perhaps
Okay.
I was too soft-spoken. I apologize if you did
Okay.
not hear me.
And
but-
another thing I'd like to know is when you open a meeting on the Ethics Committee, aren't you supposed to ask if there's anybody else recording the meeting? Because all the other places do. The Water Commissioner does it when they open their meeting. The Prudential Committee does it when they open a meeting. I'm quite sure the ethics law states that you're supposed to ask is anybody else recording the meeting besides you. And I've never seen it done here.
Well, I grant you that. I have never asked that question, but
You're right.
If,
You're right.
if I may,
I-
Yeah.
it is not, first of
No.
all, if I may, Madam Chair,
Please,
we
Mrs. Exner.
recorded the opening of the meeting and going into executive. While we can't share that tape with you, we will have that if there is a complaint filed. We do have that because we do tape the executive sessions for our own use of taking them. So the opening that Mrs. Donahue Chairman Donahue is referring to is on that tape. We did do it properly. You were here last week
No,
when
I'm
we
talking
did.
about when you opened the meeting tonight.
He's
That's
talking
what
about-
that's what I'm talking about, sir.
Mrs. Ekstrom, he's saying that I should ask the
audience.
audience.
And then if I
If anybody
if I
else
may, on the
at every
second
meeting.
one, anyone and everyone has a right to record
I
a
know
meeting.
they don't.
We do not have to. They do not have to get permission. However, if it is being videotaped, it is incumbent upon them to come up and inform us that they are taping. Or we do not have to ask them. It is.
Well, I'm quite sure if you go look at the Ethics Committee, they state that you're supposed to say it.
I think it would be the open meeting law, not the ethics. But I will check. But
If I'm wrong, I apologize. If not,
okay, then I will apologize. Absolutely, I'll let you know. Thanks, Mr. Barrows.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before citizens' participation this evening? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Westfield discussion. So Westfield liaison is here. Mr. Savageau, thank you for coming in this evening.
Having a pleasant evening so far.
It's always pleasant.
Bruce Savageau. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Town Administrator Bruce Savageau for the record, to discuss the update on the Westfield RFP Review and Recommendation Committee. And today is my 30th birthday also. So
Happy birthday to you.
I just thought you wanted. We have made a little more progress. We have 6 pages remaining in our review. And after that, of course, we still need to draft the recreational component, and we also need to go over the exhibits and make sure that they're complete as well. But substantially, if we push in our last meeting, which will hopefully the next meeting, which will be the 24th, I hope that we can deliver a substantially completed review. And then we would incorporate those changes into the Word document, which solved a major problem for us because as of this week we did receive an editable document in Word format that would allow us to make those changes online. And so we're not going to need staff to retype the entire document. I'm sure that comes as good news to Mr. Andrews. We also this week received confirmation in writing from the superintendent of the water pollution control facility that capacity is confirmed for the project. He is recommending a minimum main size of the main, and that'll be incorporated within the RFP under his recommendation. My understanding is the census came out. It was published today, the state census. Whether it's accurate or not, I guess there's been some problems, but it is nevertheless published. And that is really the only remaining and outstanding issue for us. We would like And it is not so much the population census that we're most interested in, but the housing stock number. We've certainly had quite a bit of development in the last decade since the 2000 census. So we would like to get that number updated because that does play into the 10% 40B threshold number that we're trying to achieve, and that will influence the developer as far as the number of units up to 200, and that we would like to incentivize the developer to provide in the response. And I believe that number, we could get that either through the planning department or perhaps CETA, but more likely planning, and since that's a department head, we would request the town administrator to seek that out from planning so that we can incorporate that number into the document. It's a very brief report tonight. The only other issue outstanding is that I know there's been a series of emails between my chair and your chair as far as the board's deadline meeting of the 26th. I know that our chair has said that he's not available and perhaps one other member wouldn't be, and I know that Jane has responded back that that's really up to the full board and she wouldn't unilaterally make that call. So that's really the only outstanding issue for us. I don't know whether or not you have had a chance to speak about that or whether or not you'll discuss it tonight, but whatever you decide, I'll certainly report back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Savageau. We will take that discussion up
Madam
right
Chair,
now, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Winslow.
I had two questions.
questions?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Oh, I'm
if you-
sorry. Yes, I'm
That's
happy to
okay.
answer questions.
For the record, it's my husband's 30th birthday on Saturday, so.
Oh, my God, I have a daughter who's as old as your husband.
No, I'm just kidding. He's older than that.
Yeah, we're all kidding.
Yeah. The sewer capacity.
Yeah.
What is the capacity that you were looking for?
We weren't looking for a specific capacity number. We were looking for the superintendent to tell us, in his opinion, based on the maximum number of units, 200, based on 200 EDUs at the maximum, whether or not there was sufficient plant capacity to absorb that additional 200 EDUs as in addition to the other projects that are on the board. So I can't give you a specific gallon amount, but according to the written confirmation by him, he feels that there is adequate capacity in the system to allow for the maximum amount of units to be developed.
Would those be one-bedroom units?
No, there's a combination of 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Do you know the numbers of?
That would depend on, the responses we get back in the RFP, but in the last responses, the last 5 responses, there was, if I recall correctly, there were several responses that had mostly 1 bedrooms. There was 1 response that were mostly 2 bedrooms, and 2 responses that were pretty much an even build-out of 1 and 2s.
So would a 50-50 split be a reasonable approximate?
That would be, actually, you're right, that would be 300 EDUs.
Okay. So
Pardon?
33,000 gallons per day. Okay. My next question is,
I can see our water pollution control facility guru out there, Mr. Campina, based on, and see if I'm correct on this, based on 200 units at 2 bedrooms, it would be 44,000 gallons. If we did 50-50, it would be 33,000 gallons. And if you did 1 out of 4, 3 of them 1 bedrooms and 1 2 bedrooms, it would be 27.5.
Yes,
Did you
ma'am.
base it on 44?
I based it on 44,000
Thank you.
gallons, assuming they're all going to be 2 bedrooms. That's what and using that number, the worst-case scenario is what I'm committing to, so it's less. We're even better.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ms. Campino, what was the main size that you had recommended? You
I
recall?
believe it was 6 or 8 inches. My only concern, and I think we discussed that last week, was what else was going to happen. But since it's going to be a force main, 6 inches will be plenty for that development.
Thank you.
my My second question, and I don't expect you're going to be able to answer this tonight. I meant to print it out, but then you brought it up. The housing stock number, there's an email circulating around town, and I don't know where it originated from, that we can count certain types of sober housing and other, anything that receives a governmental stipend. Do you know that to be true?
It is true.
Okay.
That, I
So
believe,
that number should be updated with, because there's now 2 sober houses on Main Street?
I believe there's 22 units
Okay.
total in Wareham that could be under those amended DHCD regulations could be include.
And they are being included.
They are included.
They're
Okay.
included in the count
On
of
the DHCD
affordable housing
count.
on the DHCD count.
Okay.
Even if, thank you, even if they were not, wouldn't make a sizable dent in the 10% number. And that's what we're struggling with when we're talking about the threshold and the number of housing stock in town. We have to take that number and take 10% of that, and that's our goal.
Right. No, I understand that. I just am not overly familiar with how that calculation works, and I know I had recently read that there were these 2 homes, I believe, in Wareham Center. So I just wanted to find out from you, because I figured you might know.
I know that, the 22 units, if they are, and I'm sure that both Jane and Brenda are correct, they are included, then that's good news. The issue is we don't have enough of those homes, frankly, in town. And maybe that's something for a future agenda as far as providing more housing for those type of needs. But this will not accomplish that.
Right. No, I understand that. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Savaggio. And happy 30th birthday.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure my wife is thrilled.
Does anyone else have a question for Mr.
Madam
Savaggio?
Chair,
Mr. Holmes?
through you, Bruce, I have 2 different times on my calendar. I have one at 9 and one at 10. What time do you understand the workshop to be on Saturday?
I don't have it on.
Oh, you don't have it time.
I thought the chair would post that according to the wishes of the board, your board. We will comply with whatever your direction is.
What time is Saturday's meeting? The workshop?
The workshop for this?
Yes.
We had not set an exact time. We were debating whether or not we would want to do it before the Wareham Works or right after the introduction for the Wareham Works.
Right. Maybe that's why I have 2 different
We have
times.
2 different times, because Wareham Works begins at 10, and I was going to ask the board, number one, Saturday the 26th, if we're still wanting to go along with that date, which is the date that we had originally set, what time would we want to do it? At 9, or maybe we even want to do it later in the day?
Yeah, because I've gotten some heartburn over the Wareham Works, over the veterans breakfast that you spoke about. Grab me on that. But we've told all these folks that serve on the review committee that 26 was the date. So I don't know.
There are
Sorry.
2 that aren't available, including the chair.
Sorry.
He heard that the chair and one other member possibly may not be available on the 26th.
On the 26th, Bruce?
Chair will definitely not be available. There may be one other member that might not be available.
Well, I mean, the bottom...
What's your, I'm sorry.
I was just going to suggest that, in my opinion, the bottom line is that you're going to show us the document at this meeting, unless you have some other issues or concerns that need to be hashed out between the 2 boards. I just think that we could wrap this up on Saturday, and
If you're asking my personal opinion, not speaking for the committee itself, but personally, we could, work hard on the 24th to accomplish as many of those 6 pages as possible, and we could absolutely turn over what we have and give the town administrator a workable document. The drafting of the recreational piece is simply a paragraph. I think the sticking point was whether or not this board and the committee were in agreement on which option we were all comfortable with, and if I'm correct, my understanding was that this board was inclined to lean towards option B, which is
That's
the management company managing, operating, and developing the fallow fields. I think I can confidently say that's also the feeling of the committee. So with that issue resolved substantially, it's a paragraph, essentially, and either the town administrator can have that as part of his drafting, or we could work on it as well. But to answer the question, if we work hard, I think we're ready to turn over what we have.
You want to shoot for 11? What time does it start?
11
10?
10.
You want to shoot for 11? And we should be out of here by 12:30ish, you think? An hour and a half?
Go back down and
Bruce?
finish.
If that, I mean...
If that, right.
Yeah.
And then whatever's left over, at least we get the workshop, we get the meat, and then we'll have some fringes, right?
And, we can
Yeah.
start working directly with the town administrator on his efforts, and that, should be that.
We already have the meetings posted for both board, for both...
Not yet. I believe that our chairman was waiting to find out, and then she'll do a joint meeting.
Right, but the Westfield Review and Recommendations Committee, I think I already saw that posted, right?
For the 26th?
Right.
Oh, it's
Yeah, we're
already posted?
I believe so,
Do you know what
yeah.
time
I
you
believe
posted it
They already
for?
have theirs posted. No?
I don't know what time it's posted for.
Mr. Savageau, what was the question I was just going to ask about? Did anyone from your committee speak with community preservation regarding the fields and any conditions or things we have to...
We have a member of the committee here who is also on CPC. I don't know if she'd like to come up and speak on it. We did discuss it briefly, and perhaps she could give us a little more information. She'd be better able to speak on that than I certainly would.
She isn't jumping. Let me see.
Madam Chair, did we agree on 11?
Okay, yes, I think, let's just get
Before
the
we go
time
on to
of the
something
meeting.
got
If we could get the
11?
time of the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we...
Yeah,
We
well, we're
we
trying
have a
to
consensus
establish
of the
the
board
time
that we want to go
before now
forward on the
somebody-
I'm sorry.
26th.
I thought we already said...
I'm not available on the 26th, but you guys can. I won't be
11
there.
o'clock on Saturday, right?
11 o'clock on Saturday.
Here in this room?
Is that a motion? We could actually meet
Well,
over in the...
I don't know that we
Need to
need
be
a
a
motion.
motion,
This
yeah,
has
the
been
chairman.
scheduled
No,
for...
we can act, right, it's
2
been
months.
scheduled for 2 months.
It's
Correct,
just a matter
Mr.
of the
Holmes.
time.
Right, why don't we set it for 11, and why don't we use the conference room?
Here?
No, in
Conference room
over
A,
at Town Halls, and then we can
Oh,
just
okay.
go up and
Alright.
down the stairs to...
Conference room
To
A
the
in
other
town
meeting.
hall.
So you'll post that?
We'll
Because
post it
As a
and...
joint?
As a joint meeting, Mr. Andrews,
Okay.
please.
I have it, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Sorry.
CPC issues.
The chair of Westfield Review talked to the chair of CPC, and there was some understanding that it's something we could do. Now, we have a CPC meeting tomorrow night, and I will ask the specific questions of the whole CPC committee to make sure that if the developer works the field, maintains the fields, and operates the fields, that they can charge fees for using that field, including the fees from Wareham residents or committees or play ball fields or something like that. Can be fair to charge Wareham people to use the fields for which CPC money has been utilized. That's the big question that's on the table that will be presented to CPC tomorrow night.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I'm sure that we'll have an answer on Saturday for the meeting on Saturday.
My intention is to give it an answer for Saturday.
Great. Thank you very much. Anything further on Westfield discussion?
Yeah, and Madam Chair, the
Mr.
other
Holmes.
question I wanted to ask Mr. Savage was, how's it going, Bruce? Is it going all right? Everybody's no issues outside of Plan A?
as far as the the dynamics of the group, it's cordial, professional. We have a lot of committed, pretty bright people that have a lot of different experiences and bring a lot to the table, and there is a lot of discussion. As a working group, I'm certainly impressed with the people I work with, and
Good.
I'm happy to work with them.
Thank you. Please
Thank you,
convey
Madam
our
Chair.
thanks to your committee, and we will see the majority of them. The majority of us will see the majority of them on Saturday at 11.
Thank you for your time.
Third floor, we'll be in the third floor of Town Hall, in the conference room. Thank you. Do we have any bills, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one bill from CDM. Okay, we have enclosed 6 copies of monthly estimate for partial payment number 10 to the contractor, Gioso and Son, 50 Sprague Street, Hyde Park, Mass. 02136, for the work complete subject project from December 1st, 2010, December 31st, 2010. As part of this change order, number 1, in the amount of $185,625 was executed between town and general contractor. The payment for this is contract number 2, project number CWSRF 3022, estimate number 10, estimated period 12/31/10, balance due contracted this estimate $340,000, $340,520.08. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's 400. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I'm going to slide the approval of the minutes of the meetings to the end. We can take care of that when we don't have so many folks waiting. And we will go to appointment to the Board of Health. Last week we had an appointment for which we were missing the term date. So if I could have a motion for the appointment of Ms. Irish to the Board of Health, Mr. Cruz?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I did just want to update the report on this. To talk to Tom Gleason took the place of Mr. Campina, and Lisa Irish is being recommended to take the place of Dr. Charles Gleason to expire in 2012.
Is that a motion, Mr. Holmes?
I thought you were going to have Mr. Cruz.
Okay.
I just want to give a report on what we found.
You could just say so moved, and that would work. Mr. Holmes, if you just say so moved, that would work.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, 400. We also have before us a decision on the Clean Water Committee. Mr.
Madam
John
Chair,
Churchill.
on this appointment, this is a position that was open on the committee. I did go back and check, and yes, in fact, there was a position open. This is not to fill the position by that was made available by the resignation of one of the members. And so this position is available. I did review spent a great deal of time researching based on the letter from the committee chairman about someone representing citizens before boards. This is for the Clean Water Committee, and I was going to try to get a hold of the gentleman today to see what his wishes were, and I just ran out of time at work. I did not speak with him because he does represent citizens from in front of other boards in town, and I was going to ask the board's indulgence, if you will, to put this off until next week, and I will get in touch with Mr. Churchill to find out what his wishes are, because we have several people in town who do serve on boards, but they're not allowed to represent citizens in front of other boards. I did try to find that in writing. I looked through the selectmen's policy book, I looked through the charter, I looked through just about everything. I know there are parts of it covered under state law, but I understand there was some motion made by a previous board to not allow this type of representation of citizens. So I couldn't actually find those minutes, but so there is an issue. So if I could put that off until next week and bring it back, I'd appreciate that opportunity.
Does anyone else have any comment?
It's fine.
No, we'll wait until next week. Thank you. An application for change of manager for Wasabi Steakhouse. Are you here? Wasabi Steakhouse. I see no one here representing Wasabi Steakhouse. We do have the application to change the manager. Unfortunately, the writing is a little Ying Er Shi. The new manager. Would you like to wait and call these folks in? Is there any reason why they're not before the board this evening? Right, I know they wouldn't need to come, but usually they do, and they usually tell us what the situation is. We can vote on it. That's correct. We can vote on it. What's the pleasure of the board? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the change in manager for Wasabi Steakhouse, Inc., doing business as Zen Palace, to Ying Shai. I hope I didn't butcher that. Ying Shi.
Under the provisions of...
Oh, sorry. Under the provisions of...
It's on the Chapter 138.
Chapter 138 of Massachusetts General Laws.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? If you haven't eaten there yet, it's great. Especially the hibachi table. It's my favorite. Thank you. And we have a request for the use of roads by Wareham Little League. Would somebody like to make a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the request by Wareham Little League Incorporated, care of Valerie Cummings, P.O. Box 614, Wareham, for the use of town roads for their annual parade on April 17th, 2011 at 12 p.m.
Is there a second?
Could we just add
It
where
is-
if I may, if I could ask to add to it, the parade starts at Elm Street to Route 28 to the Little League Field on Charge Pond Road. It is understood and agreed that the town shall be held harmless from all liability as to damage to the property or injuries to any persons.
Is that acceptable?
I'm fine with that.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. So glad you're having your parade. I had heard rumor that there might not be a parade this year, so that would be a long tradition broken. Okay, we have the town administrator's report.
Madam Chair, through you to the board and listening audience and the audience here tonight, I'd like to, because of the nature of the sewer line replacement at Onset Stonebridge, ask Guy Campina to come up and give us an update on the status of where things stand at this point in time. If you could, Guy.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Totally dismantled the pipe, hauled it away. Insulation's gone. Where we are right now is on each one of the clips, if you will, extension of the bridge to hold the pipe, we're taking off all the old rollers and replacing them with a new style of roller that's more solid. It's thicker, if you will, and it's adjustable. So that's where we are right this second. All the pipe has been ordered. It's at the shop. We've had it painted. waterproofed. And we did it indoors because we wanted to seal in no moisture, and that was a concern. We originally were going to do it out in the field, but it's been moist, so we decided to take it up to the shop and get it done there. So that's drying and ready to go. And once we get all the clips replaced, and as we're replacing the clips, we're checking the integrity of the beams that come out, the metal beams. We have one that's questionable, but we may have to replace a piece on it. It's not in the contract, but the contractor is willing to do that just because it needs to be done, so I'm all for it. So when we get done, we'll have everything will be solid, sturdy, the rollers will be brand new, and then we'll add the new pipe, weld it up, place a cleanout that we didn't have the option of before, so now we have an area to enter and clean that pipe regularly, inspect it regularly, we'll insulate it. The only thing that I'm concerned about in the long term is swimming, jumping off the bridge. Kids tend to get on the bridge, climb on the pipe, break the insulation. Insulation's broken, water gets in, moisture, and it speeds up the rotting. So I don't know how to go about it. Kids are kids. I jumped off the bridge. I'm sure everybody's jumped off the bridge. So, how do we handle that? That's my only concern. And we're looking at maybe a small wrought iron fence, something that's going to complement the community. Just a couple more feet so the kids don't jump on it and tie off the end. So that's the only thing we're thinking of in the long term. But everything else is going great.
Well, we'll try to advise our local gendarmes to make sure they do due diligence in keeping as many people off the bridge. It's not really safe to jump off the bridge. I know you survived, Mr. Campion.
No, it isn't safe, but it's done, and it's done and it's just, kids are kids, and so I just thought in the long term, and maybe we'll look at a way of getting some funding to put something just to help us stay from jumping off the bridge.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can move on to item B.
Please.
Thank you. On the 16th of March, Selectman Cruz and I attended local SERPID planning organization meeting with respect to the reconstruction, full-depth reconstruction of Route 6 and 28. Just so that everybody's aware that what hangs in the balance is $15 million of state appropriations to cover this very important project. Just to remind the board, several months back, we convened a working group to work with local businesses and residences along these highways to advise them on some of the reconstruction programs and some of the design programs. 2 weeks ago at our leadership team meeting on a Wednesday, we met with members of the design group from VHB and also with Mass Highway transportation officials, and they actually suggested that both Claire Cruz and myself and John Charbonneau attend this meeting. I just want to point out in the minutes that this money is so competitive that you can see in the minutes that other projects were in line to bite away at our project dollars, and I want to let you know that both Selectman Cruz, myself, and planner stood up and made certain that we were represented at that meeting in a very important way, and we've also asked the Department of Transportation, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Madam Chair, for this Saturday's Wareham Works meeting to be one of our keynote address presenters, so that businesses or residents that would like to come and listen and see some of their drawings can come. They're only at 25% design, but I think it's important that everybody has an opportunity for input and participation with respect to this very important transportation project. I know it's been up and down, for start and stops for some time, and I just want to let you know that that's where we stand right now in terms of enhancing the traffic flow, improving public safety and sidewalks, and better siting utilities along these important routes, and I just wanted to keep the board posted on that matter.
Well, thank you very much for doing that, Mr. Andrews. I think that it would really be a great opportunity for our citizens to come and have a first-hand meeting with the DOT, especially the businesses and the residents who live along the section of Route 6 and 28 that is being designed. This is a really great time to get your input in. They're only at 25% design, and it's a $15 million project. Some of you may remember that this came about a couple years ago when Selectman Potter was chair of the board, and we had a number of fatalities out on Route 6 and 28, and the board at the time decided to do something about that, and we went to the highway transportation folks and really actively lobbied for this project. So Mr. Andrews is absolutely right. There's a lot of competition for these funds, and we we need to be standing tall and making sure that we get what we need and that it doesn't get taken away from us. So thank you for getting to that meeting, Mr. Cruz, you as well. And, you know, showing up is 99% of life, and when you show up, you can make sure that someone doesn't steal your candy. So thank you again. And again, I encourage the residents and the businesses to come in and meet these folks today. In addition to which, there's going to be some other great exhibits there. I'm sure Mr. Andrews is going to reiterate what's going to be there. There's a number of restaurants who are doing demonstrations of food. The event is open to all Wareham residents and any other town that wants to come and try out our businesses. They're offering some nice amenities. It will be from 10 to 2 p.m. So come on over to Town Hall this Saturday, March 26th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. right over in the Town Hall. So thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Through you to Mr. Andrews, on number 2 here, or B, this Route 6 project. Is it still anticipated that after this project is complete, that the town of Wareham will own that road?
No. Sorry.
Through you to Mr. Andrews.
Sorry.
Through you to the Chairman Donahue.
I've answered that question a few times in the last 3 years.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see him explain that on TV in public.
There will be an agreement for acceptance of the roadway. That's to be negotiated once we get to a greater degree of design of the project. But it doesn't, we're not assuming any responsibility for anything at this particular time.
Okay, what about at that time?
Well, we will.
Well, hopefully no then. No then too.
We will have to negotiate. I'll give you an example, so that perhaps this might clear up the matter, at least. There's going to be some signage that is going to basically be in the right-of-way that's going to be needed for the project. It's my intention not to let some state bureaucracy decide how that's going to happen. My goal is to play an active role in that process and to give value to this Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator's Office in helping to secure the easements and other types of takings that are going to be necessary for the project. I think there are over 150 of them, by the way. So we play a valuable role in this process. I intend to accentuate that. I intend to, as you had stated earlier, Madam Chair, to keep the candy in the candy shop in Wareham. So that being said, we'll help move the project forward where other places, they can assign whoever they want to it. But even if we help with a couple of these takings, that's going to be a valuable role in that process and in making the project go forward.
I understand.
But in the end, it will remain a state road.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Both.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, on item C, I just want to let you know that I'm proud to mention that on the 15th of March, we sponsored with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, their local division of local affairs, Ms. Marilyn Brown, who's the chief of the Bureau of Local Assessment. We had about 55 to 60 people in the auditorium to put out new policies and procedures with respect to assessment, and a number of questions were raised. And actually, they spent most of the day at Town Hall, and I think this is another focus on bringing additional focus on these fiscal matters that are important to the town and to the region and the state. Madam Chair, on item number D, you have before you, I just wanted to remind the board that next week we have Mr. Kevin Farr, who's the superintendent of the Upper Cape Regional Tech, and he will be joining us to present some information on the budget. You have this, and I just wanted to point out that this notice came to my office on the 16th and was CC'd to a number of different committees, including the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Town Treasurer, and Clerk. I did spend most of the day on the 17th with Mr. Farr at his facility to go over his ideas about what increases that his school committee had presented. But as you know, it is up to the Board of Selectmen to agree to those changes as they go forward. And we toured the facility. If you haven't been up there, please go up and get a tour. You find it to be a very interesting and informative program. But we laid out all the budget documents last Thursday wanted to report to the board because of a scheduling conflict. He couldn't be here tonight, but he'll be here next Tuesday, Madam Chair. Item number E, Madam Chair, I just wanted to let you know, this fits into the so-called unfunded mandates that we get from both the federal and state government. We are in a process with 36 other communities to take a group response with regards to the Federal Environmental Protection Agency South Coast Coastal Watershed, something called the Small MS4 NPDES Draft Permit. This is just a draft, and we get to comment on it with our town council. We have made comment, as you can see, I've laid out a number of items that are concerned to the town that are unfunded mandates that we're going to be asking for some level of support at the federal and state level to give us some cost relief on a number of items. As I won't go into them, but they're certainly noted. And Attorney Jeff Blake from Koppelman and Page assisted on that matter. Madam Chair, on status report for ongoing issues and projects, we've been working with, and we have Mr. Peter Ferry coming in tomorrow to meet with our leadership team with respect to the Cranberry Commons Task Force to get an update. We've been working on that for some time, and I fully expect to get some new ideas and some new concepts that working with Peter and his team will hopefully produce some development happening at that site, hopefully very shortly.
And that site is in the area where the reconstruction of the highway will be.
That's
so
correct.
Hopefully he'll be there on Saturday.
It's uniquely positioned on the highway to get quickly to onset, as you know, and up and down the highway. I have been discussing with the police chief an agreement, and I'll keep you posted. I think it's important that we get this this process finalized. And once again, I'll keep you posted as we progress on that matter. The Model Regional Recreational Program is still ongoing, and I'm hopeful that we can work out a program at no cost or low cost to the town with the town of Dartmouth to get some additional recreation opportunities for our youth in town. We are working on, and I know there was a meeting with some of the software experts. If you can let me get that information on the business certificate program, the idea would be to track business certificates with a little bit more precision going forward with respect to the town clerk's office in our building and inspectional services area to ensure full compliance. The Land Donation Review Task Force met last Wednesday, the 16th, and we'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen shortly. On the governor's budget, we are in the process of putting additional information into the budget. I will get you an errata sheet and additional information as we go forward with respect to the governor's proposal and the soon-to-be-released House Ways and Means report on the fiscal 2012 spending plan. As you know, and we have been reporting on, I will check with Mr. Gifford in the morning, the DECA safety issues. As soon as we can get some decent weather, we'll get the crosswalk and other areas done up in that area as soon as we can. and I'll keep you posted on the progress of that if we don't get snow this weekend and perhaps into the weekend. That's the body of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Andrews? Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrews.
Welcome.
Move on to town business. The legal services update. We are meeting tomorrow evening with the 3 firms that have submitted quotes, 5 o'clock, 6:30, and 8 p.m. And we will have hopefully a decision tomorrow evening on the appointment of our legal counsel for the next year. Anything further to be added to that? We also have approval of the Wareham Police Department policies and procedures that we received from Chief Stanley, the next batch of them. I was going to suggest that since they were received today, that we would set a date for acceptance of those of April 5th to give the board time to review them.
So moved.
Madam,
Oops, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Madam Chair, could we ask through you to Mr. Andrews, could we ask our staff to date stamp things like this? Because the date that it was written was March 10th, and I got my stuff this morning, so I don't, I didn't know at what point. I knew it wasn't here last week, and so I didn't know at what point was it dropped off. So we could have these things date stamped, especially things that are dated by another department, so or another entity, so that we're not thinking that that's the date we received it.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Right,
Were they
that's the
there on Friday?
18th, not the 10th.
I got my stuff this morning.
The cover letter is dated the 10th, so I don't know, we don't know when the letter was written versus when the paperwork was actually received in our office. Yes, they were available on Friday. But
We just get them
the
date
point is that
stamped, but
the
Absolutely,
cover
Madam Chair.
letter is dated the 10th, which means technically, why
By the
didn't we
end of the
have
week,
them
we're done.
by the 15th? So, and also, when we're copying these, if we can double-side copy, we could save a lot of paper. Some of these things are a little lengthy. So, thank you.
Surely, Madam Chair.
There are another 15, I think, policies for us to review. And if you can come prepared on April 5th with your comments or corrections or suggestions, we can approve them on the 5th. Next item on the agenda is to close a special town meeting warrant. Does anybody have any questions regarding the special town meeting warrant? Special town meeting warrant is for issues that have come up that have the potential to create appropriation deficits that will need to be raised and budgeted for in subsequent tax recap and budget processes. And the purpose of the special town meeting is to address those issues now. Mid-year adjustments are routine in municipal finance, and special town meetings are the norm in most communities for such purposes. And they are an acceptable practice in accordance with Department of Revenue. I think that it really is important in light of the fact that we have had several years where we've had to go back and use free cash to pay our prior deficits, that we catch these deficits up front, and I think it's commendable that we're doing it this year. Another movement forward in meeting the audit requirements and the suggestions of the financial management plan. So,
Motion to close the special warrant.
is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous.
Madam Chair, if I could just add one footnote to your delivery on that. This might look unique to individuals looking at it. It is accepted. We're basically running a $60 million corporation. The transfers that you have before you amount to 0.004%. So on any given fiscal year, you're going to have issues where you're going to have unforeseen matters that need to be addressed. And I think the chairwoman hit it right on the head, that we're dealing with this straightforwardly right up front. You can see what our intention is, and you certainly can breathe a sigh of relief that we are tracking and understand where we need to move existing funds within the appropriation of the budget during the fiscal year. Sends a strong message to not only to our independent auditors, but as you've mentioned, Madam Chair, to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I may, through you, thank you for that, Mr. Andrews. But just a reminder to anyone that's interested, last year was the first year that I can recall that we didn't have a special town meeting warrant. So I don't know, I understand the explanation or whatever, because I have heard whispers of people freaking that for some reason we're having a special town meeting. Last year was the first year we didn't have it, and guess what? We ended up kind of behind the eight ball in June doing transfers, if I remember. So it's this is not anything out of the ordinary, and as you said, I mean, this is the responsible thing to do. So thank you, but it's I mean, it is something as Selectman Donahue, and I don't want you to feel like that you have to defend yourself for that, because it is something. No, I'm just saying that it has been out there, so I just want out there that we do this, people do this, and the town has done it. Thank you.
Okay, Under any other business, do we have any other business? Or you can
Yeah.
think about that while
Yeah.
we come back to it. Under sewer business, discussion regarding 13 Arnold Street. The gentleman here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
I'm Robert Perry, representing Nazi. He's here with me tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Perry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you tonight?
Very good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good, but I'm getting a little old to be here this late. I'm tired.
So am
don't know
I.
How you guys doing?
I have a 30-year-old daughter. I'm feeling very old. Okay, I believe you're here to discuss is it a sewer issue?
Yeah, I guess basically what we're here for is looking for money.
Oh, God, you came to the wrong place.
You know, we shouldn't have to be. This is a lot, as you well know, over at Rose Point. It was part of the initial sewer plan, part of the initial water plan. Prior to the installation of the sewer, the building inspector issued a letter that it was a buildable lot, and ultimately an application for an order of conditions was submitted to the Conservation Commission. Looking at a letter from the town of Wareham here, this thing went very much askew. On December the 15th of 2005, when the main sewer line was being installed in Arnold Street, the contractor was told to not connect 13 Arnold Street at that time. Put the provisions to connect it at a later time, but that never happened. The reason it never happened is the Conservation Commission denied the application, I think it was January 25th of '06. And Mr. Bichette called almost immediately and said, "Oh, we've denied that application." Well, I think by the time he put in this call in February, more than likely, we'd already filed the appeal to DEP on the decision of the Conservation Commission, and in March, we filed an appeal to the Superior Court. And the Superior Court ultimately determined that the town of Wareham Conservation Commission was in error in denying the order of conditions, and they ordered the town to grant that order of conditions. This was kind of a contentious thing from day one. Never, from the time we filed, all the times in court, did anyone from the Conservation Commission say, "Well, wait a minute, we stipulate this would be a buildable lot because of water and sewer, but we didn't put the sewer in, by the way." Never said that. I rather doubt town council knew that, because I don't believe town council, who I work with quite often, would turn around and go to court and say, "Oh, that's got water and sewer," knowing full well that sewer wasn't put in. When ultimately, the Conservation Commission did issue the permit, and that was after the court wanted to fine the town $500 a day for day after day after day after day when the town wasn't in compliance with the Superior Court order. And Nazi and I went before the court and said, "Oh, don't do that. We live there. We don't want to pay that money. We don't want anybody to have to pay that money." And we convinced the court not to order the town to pay, but they maintained the order that the permit issued. It did issue. Nazi got the building permit, built a house, goes to hook up sewer. "Oh, there's no stub there. We didn't give you a stub for sewer." I think the board is aware of that, because ultimately the decision was Nazi had to pay the betterment, which he did, $16,000 some odd dollars. He put the stub in himself at a cost, Nazi, $79 or $84 total? $7,900. I have the bill here. I believe it's been submitted previously, but I have it here tonight. Paying a betterment, part of the plan, I don't think anyone had a right not to put a stub in there, and I think he's entitled to reimbursement of the $7,900 that it cost him to put in the stub that should have been part of that betterment. And that's what we're here for. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, but bottom line, we're here looking for money.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
through you to Mr. Andrews. I'm assuming you're aware of this situation.
Yes, and we have been trying to work with Nazi on the issue at hand.
And that's why we're here.
Surely.
We don't want to just get back in the courts again. We want to try to resolve this.
And my intention was originally to have it resolved between Mr. Campina and Nazi and, discussion of how, best to proceed. But I'm not certain that the town has liability. I'm not certain of that. I know, Mr. Campina, you've looked at this. Maybe you can assist with some of...
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board. Mr. Andrews, I did have a meeting with Mr. Nazi, if that's his name, and we talked. Is it Nazi? I'm sorry. What?
First name. But that's
First
what-
name, okay.
That's what we've all got to call
Okay.
it.
And we discussed it. I broke out the paperwork I had available to me, and we went through it. The first point I made to him is that, as I read this, I understand that lot to be unbuildable. If there was no sewer to go, if we took sewer completely out of Rose Point, that lot would still be unbuildable because you couldn't get with the wetland, and where he was going to put the house, you couldn't get the sewer septic system in the house there at that time. So that lot was unbuildable. One of the reasons why sewer wasn't provided, the master plan, when they designed these plans, they show all these areas tied in on the plans. However, then they do their research, the engineers, and find out what the codes are, what's billable, what's not billable, and they get their advice. In this case, there's documentation that says it wasn't buildable, even though the building inspector had said under the, I think it's 40, Mass General Law 48, I'm not sure, probably in this packet, that it was buildable for the exemption. However, conservation wasn't going to allow it because he couldn't put both on there. So sewer came through, he was allowed to build. He did not pay a betterment. The statement was that he paid a betterment. I see a water betterment at that time, but I don't see any sewer betterment. So if sewer betterment wasn't assessed, then there wasn't any provision for him to tie into sewer. So part of the condition that the boards in the past have set up, if there wasn't betterment paid and you tie into the system, then you would have to pay a sewer development charge and absorb the cost of tying in to our system, which he did. He paid the sewer development charge and he paid to tie into the system. And that's been the policy right along. I talked to Mr. Gifford on this extensively. He has a lot of history in town of Wareham, and to his knowledge, we've never reimbursed anyone to tie into the system, especially in this particular scenario. So it is my recommendation that we don't rebate anything. My heart goes out to him. I understand where he's coming from. However, it's the cost of doing business. He was built on a lot without sewer. He wouldn't have had a lot to build on. And then what happened to the house happened to the house. So my feeling is, my recommendation is that it is what it is. He paid the sewer development fee, he paid the tie-in, and the town has no responsibility or liability in this matter.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow?
I'm sorry, Nazi's attorney, I forgot your name. Perry, sorry. Did you state during your opening to us that a betterment had been paid?
The betterment was paid after the fact.
Okay.
When Nazi built the house there and determined that you did not put in the stub provided for on the town's plans, on the basis that according to the town, December the 15th, they told Albanese not to put it in, despite the fact that it was still before Concom at that time. And Concom was representing on the record that it was a sewer, or would be a sewer, and a watered lot.
So this lot,
This isn't like any other. This isn't like where somebody goes down to get a lot that, they can dig a long trench and look into sewer. This is a lot the town represented as having sewer, represented they were putting the sewer in over and over again.
I get all the letters.
And this was a backdoor approach to trying to defeat him because he beat the town, what I think. So I don't think it's like your normal situation by any means.
Mr. Campina?
I believe, as my understanding, I spent some time at the Conservation Office, and they have a folder probably thicker than this on all this communication in court cases. And as I understand it, going through it, the ruling at the court level was relating to the conditions applied on the lot after sewer was there and put the house, conditions to the encroachment on the wetland. And it seems that the town of Wareham had no previous provisions or previous laws specifically, then they waived that. However, it wasn't to say that he was grieved by tying in at his cost. The Concom agreed to the fact that he could build a house if sewer was provided. If sewer was not provided, he wouldn't have been able to build that house. So that's how I understand the facts. That's how I read them. That's how I understand them. So sewer gave him the provision to build on this lot. So therefore, what I'm saying is that he didn't pay a betterment in the beginning because they weren't going to allow him to tie in. It wasn't buildable. Through conservation, it became buildable. At that time, there's a letter from the board stressing to him that A, he would have to pay a sewer development charge, B, he would have to absorb the cost. It also said that he'd have to hire one of our approved installers and have CDM and our guy there when he tied in. I see no record of that being done, but I'm assuming it has. And that's how that's how I see it. That's how I reviewed it. And again, I would strongly recommend to the board that we not refund him any money. And that's my position, based on the facts and understanding of what I'm reading.
Mr. Campina, when the plans were designed to soar Rose Point, was this lot represented as a soared lot on those plans?
It was represented, and I even have it here, it shows a line of lateral going to that lot like all lots. And what they do...
But was the lot, we had this conversation a few weeks ago when we talked about the Parkwood area.
Absolutely.
When they walked the street and they counted the lots for the betterments, was this lot counted?
No. No, because that lot was not counted, because if it was counted, he would have paid a betterment.
Excuse me, if I could just ask one question kind of on that same. Was this lot J in that subdivision?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Because I'd like to take a look at that stuff, but if the board has any other questions, that's fine, but I would recommend that we not make any decision now, because I think that we need to review this. I'm familiar with this subdivision. I'm familiar with the original Planning Board 2001 decision on this, because this came up before previously, and I don't remember. It was a 30-foot buffer. Wasn't it a fence that you were trying to put up near the wetlands, or they wanted to put a fence up, they wouldn't let you build the house so close to the wetlands, and then they were trying to get you to, see, I remember it, but I don't remember the specifics, so I'd like to refresh my memory on it.
Can't be, that's right.
With all respect to Mr. Campini is probably new to the sewer department. He's making an effort to understand the case, but he understands it all wrong. Nobody understands it but me, because I suffered 6 years to build this house on top of it and lost money $2,000. On top of all the harassment and besides the story and spending all my money on it. This case was not ever because the sewer was not sewer. I got a letter from the town building inspector, from sewer department, from Mr. Hartman, and from Selectman, and from Mr. Mark Gifford, before I bought the lot in 2005, saying the sewer is going to be there. So when we went to conservation, sewer issue was not, sewer was not in the condition, there was nothing. What Mr. Campino's talking, he's getting a little confused. When he said, this is the discussion he's talking about, that happened in 2009, when we went before the selectmen, the sewer commission, and said we want sewer, he says I have to have an engineer and all this thing and install it. But it was never a condition with the conservation commission. There was never an issue sewer, because we always going there, because the sewer, just me and everyone else at Rose Point, whose lot became buildable because of sewer. This is unrelated to the conservation. This lot has an issue with one corner of the house was 32 feet to wetland, one corner was 60. Town of Wareham back then did not have a zoning bylaw allowing to, basically, before last town meeting, you could have built it right on the wetland legally. And right now, town meeting passed a law last year, you needed 30 foot, it's a bylaw. When I went there was not a bylaw, that's why I went to the court and they won. And the judge ordered the town of Wareham, which most of you don't know this because nobody talked about it, $122,000 fine for being in contempt. Mr. Perry, he asked me if I would, and the judge said it was very nice of me to do this, sign a waiver, so we reapply, and so I don't make my town pay this money. But apparently your lawyer and your agent did not tell you that story. So going back to this, the water was installed and it was assessed. When the reason it wasn't assessed, because you don't assess it unless you install it. That's why it wasn't assessed. But the all the intention of taking it at the registry deed, we have all the records when they do the taking. When you started the taking in 2000, doing the work, doing the taking for the water and the sewer, all the intention is there, and I got all the letters before I wrote the name, before all became issue, became an issue. So the intention, the sewer was going there. Somebody told, I don't want to get into details who said and who didn't say it. The sewer was not installed in purpose. The water, somebody had no control over the water department, the water was installed, the sewer wasn't installed. Why would the water be installed and the sewer installed? We're not going to go any further in arguing this case. It was done wrong by me, and I'd like to have my money. Would you like to do it? I thank you, and we'll put it to rest, and we consider water on the bridge. You don't want to do it? It's totally up to you. It's not mandatory. We'll seek alternatives.
Well, Mr. Alpalazzi, that's what I was just asking, is that if, for the rest of the board, if we could have, rather than trying to make a decision tonight,
That's fine.
if we could have a
I
chance to
think
look
that's
at
the
it,
right thing to do.
because,
I think you ought to talk it over, maybe talk with town council.
well, at least even just be able to look at the old paperwork, because like I said, now this is the Salamondo development, right? It was originally,
It used to own it.
but it used to be part, that's what I'm saying, that was
It's
the
not
original
part
one?
of the subdivision, no.
It wasn't part of the subdivision, but it's Lot J.
It's a lot,
On
the
that
subdivision is the other side. I built that subdivision. This is a lot
That's
on
what I
this
was,
side.
okay,
It's towards the marina.
okay. But it's on, you're going down
No,
Arnold?
you got the wrong lot completely.
Oh,
I
okay.
know which one you're talking about. No, this is the one, it's on the corner with, not Donald, it's on the corner, you know that house has a nice canopy in front of it, to park his cars? But you're going down to the marina on the left, there's a house, has a nice like wooden canopy, always park his nice cars.
Oh, okay,
It's the lot next to it. The one you're talking about is way in the wetland on the right.
This is what's
okay.
question.
Oh, that must be, okay, that must have been the one, all right, okay, well, see, and that's the thing, is that I remember it, but I don't remember the specifics, so I'd like to be able to look at all the paperwork,
For this person,
and
this
before we
came
just
because of the wetland.
make a knee-jerk reaction one way or the
Yeah,
other.
I'm not gonna let you
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
spend 6 years.
If you follow
I'll
it,
wait until
and say that it wasn't built, it says it right in there, it does. It says it wasn't built.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
No, I-
Sorry.
is it possible for us to
One
get
at
the,
a time, please. Gentlemen. Mrs. Winslow?
is it possible for us to get copies of the documents that,
I was just gonna say that, I'd be very happy to make you a
Attorney
copy
Perry.
of everything.
and can
by
you
the
get
end
it?
of the week and get them
yeah.
down to Mr. Andrews. Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough, because I think it would be more helpful if we could see what we're hearing.
And Mr. Perry, what was the total amount?
It's only $7,900.
And if I may,
We
the reason-
never would have given up the 122 or whatever it was if we were told, hey, we put it to you through a backdoor method.
If I may, it sounds a lot of money, but the reason was a lot of money. The municipal maintenance was there surveying all the time while we were working. We had, it's in the water, 8 feet underwater. We had to box it, we had 3 machines, we had a hole 50 feet by 30. It was about 6 guys working there for 2 days. I mean, it sounds a lot of money. If it was a wet, not wet, it's underwater, the stuff. We went 13 feet under the street. And when we hit like 6 feet, we got water. So that's why it was a lot of money. Excuse me?
Don't worry about it.
Whatever you.
Criminal-wise, guys.
I just have, just for clarification, and I'm sure that will be somewhere in the paperwork, but paid a betterment, didn't pay a betterment? There's no sewer betterment on this property, correct?
Well,
You
he's
didn't-
paid a better.
Sewer development
Not a
charge.
sewer betterment assessment they should have been because of the fact they pulled the stuff
There was
on
only water betterment.
05. But then when he came back, they imposed the betterment of 16,000.
So you did pay the
He
betterment?
did pay it.
Yes, sewer development charge. It's a 16,
16,742.52.
that's right. What's in, not to
Thank you.
confuse it. Okay.
I was confused on that point. Thank you for clarifying it.
He just came and said, look, I didn't get my sewer, I want to pay my betterment, have my sewer, and that was agreed upon.
Okay, then.
I would like to give also an example. Mr. Calvino said it was we never paid for connection. In 1988, I built a house on Red Brook Road for Mr. Earl Farmer, a firefighter from onset. We built the house for him, and there was the manhole right there. We went to put, the sewer betterment was paid and everything. We went to find the sewer, and Corey from onset was installing the sewer. There was no stop. So we went to sewer department back then, it was Shaw, Mr. Shaw. And they didn't put the sewers, I don't know why they didn't put the stuff. And the town paid Mr. Corey from the manhole to the property and from property to the house, Mr. Fowler paid it. I was the GC back then. So it did happen before.
Where I said it wasn't reimbursed, if the town made a mistake, then obviously the town would pick up the cost of putting that lateral in. In this scenario, the town didn't put the lateral because the lot was unbuildable, and we don't put laterals on unbuildable lots. Sewer made that lot buildable. So before that sewer went in, and so we're confusing the conservation issue that they issued. If he had sewer, then he could build a lot. With a septic system, there wouldn't be a lot, there wouldn't be a building on it. And that's the case. And what he's fighting with after the fact is nothing to do with the simple fact that a sewer lateral was not put in because that lot was determined unbuildable. Sewer made it buildable, so because he absorbed the cost of that.
Not to make a lot of, to go on, I'm gonna give you a package, and I agree with what you saw from
And can I
But
just,
the sewer, the stuff was going in until December 15th of 2006, when the installation was actually being done in front of that lot, and the installer, Albanese, said,
And-
don't put that one in. Why? They're mad at us for fighting that battle, that's why.
And we have
Well-
the guy to testify to
Madam
this
Chair.
from Albanese.
I will.
Madam Chair,
There's a million stories in the big city, but we'll take that into consideration.
can I
I'll put together
also,
a package for you with all the documents,
Thank
okay?
you. That
Thank
would be
you.
very much appreciated. Mrs. Winslow?
can I also ask that if Mr. Campina has any historical records at the sewer facility related to this matter, that he gather them for us also, so we have all the information?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And also the conservation has stacks and stacks, so you may want to tap into
Well,
their
we don't
source.
really want stacks and stacks, I
Well,
don't
you
think.
pull out what you want, because
One copy would be
Yeah.
sufficient.
I'm just suggesting that if you have anything to add to it, that,
absolutely.
we,
And I-
Just
And I think that also is that Mr. Campina's assessment is absolutely accurate as far as what occurs now. We are going back to 2005. I heard that Attorney Perry or Mr. Ecolazzi mentioned that they have a letter from a former town administrator that nothing would surprise me, so I would like to see that paperwork.
And the selectmen, and the sewer, and Mr. Gifford, 5 letters, and the plans. These are 5 letters, I don't think that 5 of them wrong.
Oh, all 5 probably were, but we may be beholden to it. So that's why I want to look at it.
We'll
And
take it
probably
under
were.
consideration. Thank you for coming, explaining your situation to you.
Thank you very much.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome.
For your time.
Have a good night.
You're welcome.
Most of yours.
Should I do the minutes? Yeah, this is the end. Okay, let's go back and do the minutes. Seems like there's an awful lot of people sitting out there. Am I missing something from my agenda? Okay,
They
good.
just like us.
It's a good audience tonight. Full house. All right, we have minutes of,
Yes, Madam Chair, approve a regular session meeting minutes, November 16th, 2010.
second.
is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Oh, I can't vote because I wasn't here.
It is
You should just abstain.
No, I'm abstaining. 3-0-2.
The next one is December 14th, 2010. So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. We were all here.
Next one is December 21st, 2010.
Second.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous.
Next one is January 4th, 2011.
Second.
So move.
Aye.
All in favor? I guess I'm falling asleep over here. 5-0-0. Thank you.
And, well, this goes back. October 27, 2010.
Second?
No, you gotta hold these.
They're not executive
No, they're
session.
not
Oh, they
executive.
weren't?
This was the public one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I double-checked that
Oh,
when I was
okay.
reading them. But second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Is that it, Mr.
That
Cruz?
completes the minutes, Madam Chair.
Do we have any other town business to come before us this evening?
I do, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Ekstrom?
As the board knows, the Scotty Montero Jr. Foundation was instrumental in helping us with the Stop the Violence, Increase the Peace rally. And I had received a call from Wendy to ask if we could issue a letter of support for them for a grant that they were applying for. Unfortunately, they had to submit the grant thing before we had a meeting. But what I offered her, I told her I would ask the board if we were so inclined, if we could sign a letter, because there's another grant round coming up in a few weeks, and the letter that I have, if the board is so inclined to sign it, says, "To whom it may concern, it is with great enthusiasm that we offer this letter of recommendation on behalf of the Scotty Montero Jr. Foundation. The Scotty Montero Jr. Foundation has been instrumental in providing awareness and resources for anti-violence programs to the Wareham Public School System and our community. We wholeheartedly endorse and support any assistance you can offer this worthwhile foundation. They stepped up to become one of the leaders in the community for a recent Stop the Violence, Increase the Peace rally. They support programs for our schools such as Rachel's Challenge and Katie Brown Educational Program. We appreciate your consideration and support for this foundation that has become invaluable within our town and our schools. Sincerely, the Wareham Board of Selectmen." So if,
Is that a motion?
or is there,
Second.
okay, then it's a motion. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
Thank you. And then I also have the, all of the letters of, thank you, I have these just for our records. The letters, the certificates that we had talked about before, I have all those completed. And then I just have one other thing that, in the, thank you. I would like to ask the board for its consideration to create a policy for the reciprocal use of town buildings. As you may be aware, in the past, the town has always been able to use, like many other communities, the majority of other communities, been able to use school buildings for voting for election time. And the school department has been pulling that back, and it actually comes to a great cost to the community and to the taxpayers, that while we have these buildings, they have police officers that are present for the entire election process, but we have been forced to move to private buildings where we are paying essentially rent, which is heading up to $1,000 a day for those elections. And I would like the board's consideration for a policy, as I said, the reciprocal use of town buildings, to ensure mutual cooperation and support between the town of Wareham and its school department. The Board of Selectmen, acting through the town administrator, shall designate a portion of the second-floor offices of Town Hall through the doors after the clerk's office for the use of the school department, in exchange for the town to be able to secure the elementary school buildings to be used as voting locations for elections held by the town clerk. This policy shall remain in effect until such time as the school department decides to deny access to its buildings for elections, at which time the school department shall have 30 days to vacate the town hall. I you know, I know it really is, because we need to, if we have to be forced to work together, we need to work together. And I think that something like this where, I mean, I remember growing up, and I remember that we didn't have gym on election day. You know, whoever had gym didn't have gym that day because that's where the elections were held. But all the kids knew that elections were being held. And so it gave you a source of, of pride and responsibility, and at least gave you a clue that there was something big going on. I talked to another selectman who said that they actually closed the schools in where they lived for election day. I certainly don't think we need to do that, because I know that, many of the other surrounding towns use their schools, and I think that it's really an important thing to do. So I don't know how the board feels about that.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow?
I would prefer to discuss that at a meeting that had the school committee and superintendent present.
Well, I think that they've already informed us that we have, this election is the last election that we can use any of the schools, and then we're out. They've unilaterally made that decision.
But I want to know why they made that decision. Before I vote in favor of a policy like this, if there's a reason why they've done that, and there are many communities that are either A, closing school on election day, or trying to get away from this, and some of it has to do with logistics, such as parking, busing, things of that nature. Before I vote in favor of this policy, I want to hear from them why they're feeling that way, what their reasons are. I mean, I think we should, before we vote for a policy that basically says if we can't have our elections in November in your schools, then get out of our town hall by the end of December, I think we need to have a back and forth conversation. I mean, we're essentially forcing them to do what we want by this policy without having any conversation out in the open for everybody to hear. That's my feeling.
And just if I may clarify, I would say what I said was that, not that people are closing schools now. What I said is that someone had said years ago they used to close the schools. I don't know of any. I know of many communities in the area that they vote at the schools because then it saves the money. And when you're paying, paying for elections, and you're paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to rent other places because municipal buildings aren't available, I think that.
But if I may, the MCAS are like right upon us in the next couple of weeks. I mean, that to me would be a legitimate reason for some of these classes, but they have to have makeups for kids that aren't there, and then there are special MCAS for other types, for different children. I really think that we need to have a conversation with the school committee, preferably, and the superintendent, or just the superintendent. I mean, I think that, if they're telling us that we can't have voting in their schools because they just don't want to play nice in the sandbox, then fine, we don't have to play nice in the sandbox. But if there's reasons that we all understand and agree, that they're difficult issues to overcome, or maybe there are ways we can overcome those issues. I don't know, because I don't know what the reasons are. So.
Well, I would think that if there were any reasons aside from the fact that, I would think that they would have told us that, rather than just saying that it's not convenient, it disrupts the children, and so therefore we don't want you here. But like I said, when it was at Hammond, it was in the auditorium. When it was at Minot, it was in the gymnasium. Deacon's is at the gymnasium. So, if there were reasons, I would have thought that they would have discussed that with us, rather than having principals calling our clerk's office and informing them, I'm sorry, I'm not allowing you to do this anymore.
Well, but I do believe that the principals under Ed Reform have total control over their buildings, and that may be where part of the problem lies.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair. As far as I know, I haven't seen a notice come across our desk yet. And through you to Mr. Andrews, have you gotten anything, and have you worked anything out?
Through you, Madam Chair, this has been an issue with respect to the use of the school that has come up for the next election cycle, so it's not going to affect.
No, this one here is the last one that
Right.
we are eligible. By
So-
September, it has to be changed.
So there's not a November election, so you're really talking next spring, right? But the idea here is that, and I do agree with Member Ekstrom, that when we did check out the cost of going to a private resource to get handicapped accessible access for people who want to get out to vote, and there are men and women across the world who are fighting for that as we speak, it did seem a little bit odd to me that we would have to pay for that, but we do have, we can coordinate the day perhaps with the superintendent where it's a half day or professional day or something like that. It seems to me there's a better way to do this, and to use the facilities that are not only important to the youth understanding what voting is about, but also to find a way to make it, the town clerk doesn't have a lot of resources to be putting thousands of dollars and paying for janitors and all that stuff. So I do feel for her at this juncture. We don't have a facility lined up. We have made some forays into that world, but you are talking in the thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
through you to Mr. Andrews. So if this is a year away, we have a year to figure out how to resolve this issue. And have you checked with the superintendent? If the principal's called the clerk's office and said, I don't want you using my building, does the superintendent even know about it?
Yes, and he supports it.
He is involved in the process, and
So does he have an issue with coming here? Madam Chair, I just request that we schedule the superintendent on the, next week seems kind of full, but maybe for April 5th, so that we can talk to him about this and how this is, what our intentions are.
I would say that having him in on Election Day might be apropos.
Or maybe after. I mean, we have a year to figure this out. All I'm saying is that I think we're jumping the gun with a policy like this without having some dialogue.
Well, although it may be jumping the gun, if there are any recall elections, special elections, anything like that, the clerk's office has 60 days, I believe it is, to get things in place. So even though there may not be technically an election for a year, the clerk has to be ready for an election within 60 days after this election. There could be anything like that, but she has to be prepared 60 days after an election for another election, for whatever reason there could be.
Mr. Holmes? You look like you're thinking.
I thought it was pretty ridiculous in November that the town had to actually pass a law for two boards to talk to each other. I mean, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. My only question on this was, I don't have an issue with it, but I was going to ask Mrs. Ekstrom if she wouldn't mind striking the word elementary. Because we do have a
To
middle
secure the school buildings, yep.
We do have a middle school and we do have a high school.
Hmm?
But
So
I
just to
didn't get
secure
any
school
notice that-
buildings?
I didn't get any notice that they just arbitrarily said you can't use our buildings. I did get a notice when they changed the school in Onset because I'm a registered voter there. Although maybe I didn't. I think I actually drove there and they sent me to the VFW.
That's,
Right.
yeah.
So
And
there
there
was
are-
no communication there. I didn't get anything on this latest. So maybe the only way is to pass a policy. Makes sense to me. Get it done. I think maybe you can take that out because we can use the high school building.
So I'd make a motion
Just secure this.
to secure school buildings. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why town meeting passed a law to force us to talk to each other is because we don't. Maybe this is a good issue for us to start. Before we pass,
And they should have started before they closed the school for the next election.
but what, you just admitted that you don't have any notice of that. And Mark said that they got some calls from some principals and he's talked to the superintendent.
It's, We can always amend the policy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where, I think the last school is what, out behind the crossing, right?
Deacon's
up
up
behind the
near
crossing.
Smith, yeah.
So, I mean, what about those, where are those poor people gonna go vote?
I would say, I don't know, she has negotiations with the church, I think, or has at least got some
Out in that
information.
part of town? Is the church big enough?
No, I think it's up here. I think the
Right,
church
so they
is.
have to drive all the way in town just to vote because they won't let them use the school building? That doesn't seem fair to the voter.
To the
Why should- You know,
taxpayer.
we usually try to vote in your neighborhood.
Mr. Cruz, did you want to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair. Instead of being in haste to make a policy right now, tit for tat, let's check all the resources we have Plan A and Plan B. Check where we can have a meeting place with them or without them, and then we can go from there. Instead of playing a tit for tat game, and then we can always come up with a policy later on. But right now, we need dialogue between us and the school department.
Well,
Thank you.
then, I would like to go back to my original suggestion that we have them come in on April 5th, because I think that's a good evening to have a discussion. And I do think that, the schools really ought to have a very good reason for not allowing us to use the buildings. And if it's not a very good reason, then I think that we should go forward and pass the policy. I think that it's unacceptable. I mean, so many people, precinct 2 and 3 are jammed into that narrow road going up to the VFW.
Yep.
Every time there's an election, all you hear is complaints from the people. They can barely go one car past the other in that precinct. It's crazy, where before we had the Hammond School and the Minot School, and that worked for so many years. It sort of came to me as a big surprise when the school department just decided to say, out of the school, and we just did. And so I do think that it's an appropriate discussion to have, and I do think that it is an educational experience for the kids. My kids went to Deacon's school. Every year on election day, they had elections. The kids had elections. If it teaches the kids how to vote. It teaches the kids the importance of voting and their right and privilege to vote. And the teachers run all kinds of lessons around that when it's voting day in the school, and they can see people coming in and out to vote. So, I mean, I'm in favor of trying to keep the elections in the schools, and I'm in favor of hearing the school department tell us why they shouldn't be in the schools and why they just decided to change it without talking to us in the first place. So I think open communication and dialogue are reasonable and rational, and that I will put them on the agenda for April 5th.
And I withdraw my motion, and I don't have a problem with that, but if the board...
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would say if the board, if they don't come in, then I will be prepared to re-implement the motion.
And this is not, in terms of this motion, the policy is not just in regard to the Deacon's school.
No.
But all polling places, so that if they don't have a good reason or they voted not to show up on the 5th, and we implement this policy, then the VFW, we could stop using that building and go back to the school system, correct?
Correct.
Or we would go back.
Or they can be out of there.
Right.
If memory,
I'm fine with that.
if memory serves me, with the Hammond School, there was a lot of problems with the parking. I know my daughter was going to a preschool thing at the time, and it got very difficult, especially for people who were handicapped and in wheelchair, to access the building at times. So, well, it is, but we also want to make sure that people can vote and get there easily.
Well, I would say I voted at Hammond
All
for
right.
10 years. My children went to school
Ladies
there.
and gentlemen, I'm sure that if there are those kinds of issues to be dealt with, and that's the reasons that the school department comes up with then we'll sit here and we'll talk about what we can do about parking. I mean, for all kinds of festivals, we use the Hammond School yard for parking, and we have the field is right there, and there can be an area that could be cleared for the handicapped folks to park, and other people can use their legs and walk up the street. So many people who voted in Onset have said to me, I don't vote anymore because now I can't walk.
That's right.
So I think it will be a healthy discussion to have with the school department. We'll invite them to send representatives, and we'll tell them, we're broke. I mean, they want our money. They want us to give them money, yet we're being forced by them to go out and pay money from, to do something that we used to do in a reciprocal arrangement with them. So I think it will be a healthy discussion, and I will put it on the agenda for April 5th, if that is the consensus of the board.
Please.
Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Ekstrom. Did you have anything else?
Not under any other business. I'm under liaison.
Any other business? Mrs. Winslow? Mr. Holmes, any other business? Liaison reports, Mr. Holmes.
Madam Chair, I have two quick items. The first is from the CETA Board. We met on Wednesday. And I only bring this up so that folks in town are aware of what's going on. Over at there's a grant that is at capacity at the Council on Aging, and that the intake coordinator will be ending at the end of this month. So when folks hear that that person is no longer there, he or she is not a town employee, they were paid under a grant, and the money has been used, and so that grant is ended. So we're not firing anybody over there or laying anybody off. The second issue was on Main Street. We had 6 units of affordable and 2 units of market rate that were done with the CETA grant. During the process, when it was originally approved, the owner had applied for 20 years affordability. At some point in that process, the state changed to 30 years. And there's a lot deeper explanation, but the short of it is that we had counted on those 8 units because you can include the 2 market rate with the affordable, and we've lost those 8 units out of our inventory. Although still affordable, we can't count them because of the new 30-year program by the state. So, 2 pieces of bad news, I guess. We still have a nice-looking building on Main Street, but we lost 8 units, and for a town struggling to get units in our inventory, it's always sad to see some go by the wayside. So that's my liaison report. And one other thing. And tomorrow night
ZBA.
is the zoning board meeting. Starts at 6:30 over in the cafeteria. And tomorrow night on the agenda will be the
Wind turbine.
follow-up on the wind power. So if anybody's interested in the second meeting on that wind power, I believe Mr. Cosgrove will be giving more of his presentation tomorrow night. Oh, you are too? And Mrs. Ekstrom will also be speaking tomorrow
I
night.
may be there.
That's if we get out of here in time.
Yeah, well, I got a ways to go now.
Mr. Cruz, do you have any liaison reports? 2 things on the Finance Committee. They want to go to the printer on April 11th, and I'm hoping that we can work that out, that we could go to the printer possibly on the 13th, which would allow the newly elected Board of Selectmen to have time to vote on the articles. Traditionally, the outgoing Board of Selectmen, or even people who are up for re-election, did not vote on the warrant in the event that new people came into office. So there's a possibility. We'd like to see if we can go get some consensus from the FinCom to go to the printer on the 13th instead of the 11th. The other thing is that on the Upper Cape regional budget that Mr. Andrews discussed earlier, I would like to invite the FinCom to meet with us next week and hear Dr. Farr's presentation here so that they can understand what the issues are. As they usually do, the Upper Cape VOC came in with a budget figure higher than what was planned for, and a couple of times we have voted against the increase that they've requested from us. And I know that Mr. Andrews met with them already, but like I said, they'll be here to talk to us, and we will try to hammer out a way forward with them on the revised numbers that on the budget numbers that they've come up with. So I would like to extend an invitation to the Finance Committee to meet here with the board, or some representative from the Finance Committee to meet here. Obviously, the Finance Committee can invite Mr. Farr to meet with them as well, but just the opportunity, if the Finance Committee chooses to take us up on our invitation, they're welcome.
Madam Chair, to that point, as I hope everyone is aware of it, or how it works, is that because the vocational school, it covers 5 towns, 5 towns have to vote for that increase. If 3 towns vote for the increase, the other 2 are stuck doing it. Even if they vote against it, they'd have to have a special election to come back and vote in favor of it. And so one thing that we haven't done in the past, I don't believe, is that perhaps we could see if, I don't know, maybe the chairman of the Finance Committee could contact the chairman of the other finance committees of the other 4 towns, or something like that, to see if they're so inclined, because Wareham's town meeting is anywhere between, I think we're the earliest one. I think we're anywhere between 2 and 5 weeks before all the other towns that participate in this. So if we could be so inclined to find out how they're feeling about this increase, and if they're going to be recommending it to their board or their town meeting, and perhaps even that discussion, once we find out from Mr. Farr the reasons for that increase, that we can take that into consideration, as well as what the other towns are doing before that decision's made. I think it might be a wise way to do it.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I know that it's been done in the past, and depending on what exactly the Upper Cape Vocational School is looking for, I know that 3 out of the 5 towns have in fact voted against it in the past, and they've had to go back and regroup. So there's that. And then just so the board knows also, there's been a lot of discussion at the Finance Committee meeting so far, and I wanted to thank Marilyn Donahue for providing us with that breakout on legal services that was done. It's a little bit dated. Figures are a little bit higher than what we're dealing with now, but at least gives everybody a bit of a flavor of the percentages that are being spent in each category, and also by what other attorneys, because when we have our discussion tomorrow evening, we'll be talking about different categories and who does them, and hiring a town council is always an interesting evolution, because there's always other town council, and we have to expect that if whichever quote we decide upon, we have to realize that there's going to be additional expenses from the other folks who deal with some of our stuff now, and that's ongoing. So doesn't guarantee us a slash in the budget of $100,000 by any stretch of the imagination. If we were, the budget's what, 225 or something like that right now, 250. So the planning board, for example, makes use of the Witten Group, and they will have ongoing litigation that we will still have to make payments for. So there's that. And just basically, I think the budget process has been going fairly well. I would like to try to see the Finance Committee come up with their recommendations so that they can be brought back before this board, so we could go into, if they have any, we haven't got any recommendations yet from the Finance Committee regarding the budget that they voted on. So I'd like to, hopefully we can get some of those together and be on the same page going into town meeting. And that's all I have. Anybody else with a liaison report? Brenda?
This isn't my liaison, but last week, I might be mistaken, but I thought that I asked if we could have Board of Health in.
They will be here next week.
They'll be here next week, okay. And then finally, to end on a high note, when we were speaking with Mr. Savageau and trying to set a time, it was because of Wareham Works. So just a last-minute reiteration that we are having Wareham Works.
Yes.
How is that? That's
There's
smooth enough?
food.
There's plenty of food.
From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I don't have all my information with me, but it's going to be at Wareham Town Hall. So if you have a business in town, want to do business in town, want to see how business is done in town, hungry and want to taste the food of some of the businesses in town,
Want to know what's going on Route 6 and 28?
yep, want to talk to the DOT or
DHCD.
DHCD or whatever, but it should be a really good time, a lot of information.
Chamber of Commerce, Upper Cape, Bailey's, Zen, Chili's Restaurant.
Bring your appetite.
And a complimentary
And
bag.
bring your business cards, and ought to be fun. It's a second annual, so we're gonna, got a lot of good response from the first one, and very positive, to spin on this one, so let's keep it going and show how Wareham works.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good evening.